This is a Picking Podcast.
Today we're going to talk about ghosts. Some people call them spirits, some people call them ghosts, some people call them souls, some people call them disembodied spirits, whatever you want to call them. They're entities that are not supposed to be here, at least we think. So, they say that children are most open to seeing spirits just because they have no opinion one way or the other. They're so fresh to the world that if they see something, they're not really aware of what they are, so they don't instantly shut it out. That being said, it's a very scary thing for a parent to go through when your child is seeing things. The reason I find this subject so interesting is because my own children have seen spirits. Marky was so little. He was like 3 years old when he first had his experience. He didn't have any language yet because he was a late developer, so he talked really late. He had no language. But starting like in one night, he ran into our room, and he was really scared, and he jumped on the bed, and he just really wanted to like just sleep with us, and he wouldn't. Obviously, we couldn't tell what was wrong with him because he couldn't talk. And then the next night, he did it again. And then the third night, he said, "Collie, Collie, Collie." He ran into the room crying, "Collie, Collie, Collie." And he jumped on the bed and he pointed at the end of the bed. And that's when we knew something was different. And the first thing that came to my husband's mind was, oh, I used to have a collie when I was a little boy. It was my favorite dog, and she was my protector. And then I thought, oh, well, who knows? Maybe that's what it is, right? Maybe he's seeing a dog in his room. Of course he's going to get scared, we thought. And then we just let him sleep in our bed a few more times, and then we sent him back to his bed. And then he came back, and he was all, "Collie, Collie, Collie." And I said, "Marky, is it a dog?" And he says, "Collie, Collie, Collie." And we couldn't figure it out again, so we just let him sleep with us. Well, the next morning, our mother-in-law called us, and she told us that our nephew, Colin, died. We didn't know this, but he was on life support because he had suffered an asthma attack, and he had been on life support for like 5 days, and they were trying to decide whether they should let him go or, keep trying. Well, we put one and one together. We showed Marky a picture of Colin, and he smiled. Obviously, he couldn't tell us, but he smiled. He related to the picture, and then it never happened again. The collie thing in his room never happened again. He was fine sleeping alone. And it's really hard to pretend like that's not what happened. Since that day, we've been really aware of things around us. Because I gotta tell you, in those days that I tried to pretend like it wasn't something spiritual, a lot of weird things were happening in my house. We had a closet full of toys where we would turn off the toys and put them in there just to keep organized, but it was like a huge closet full of toys. But we made very sure to turn off all the toys because it's very expensive to keep putting batteries on toys. But in those days before we figured out what was going on with Marky, toys would just fall out of the closet, and or they would just start talking in the middle of the day while I'm sitting in the living room. I would hear them in the bedroom, and one specific toy would say, "I can see you. Can you see me?" And that freaked me out. So what do you do when you're sick? You call a doctor, right? So what we did is, because we thought we had spirits, we called our pastor. And what our pastor suggested was, go walk around your house, pray around your house, and tell whatever's there that this is your house, and you're not allowed here. Go away. So we did that, and we felt good about that, but we still didn't know what it was, and it kept happening. It kept happening until it got what it wanted. In other words, he told us. I mean, he knew that we knew what it was, trying to talk to Marky. And only him and Marky know what they talked about, and only him and Marky are going to know what he wanted, and I've made peace with that. But since that day, we've learned very much to be aware of our children, not only about strangers out in the street, but also what follows them to their rooms, to when they're asleep, when they're awake, when they're anywhere. It's our jobs now to police what's around them, and that means educating yourself about spirit life. You know, there are dead people there. I mean, people do die and something happens to their spirits, and it's just the truth. It's reality, whether you believe it or not. It's what happens. And trying to communicate with the dead is as old as time. But what if you don't really have a choice? What if you're born with the ability to see dead people? And there are people, I've met a lot of people like that, strangely enough, in my work. I interviewed, I'm talking about like maybe 24 men and women who are sensitive to seeing spirits, because I was casting for a show and I had to interview a bunch of people and on their experiences and see who was the best at communicating with the dead. And almost all of them that were really good at it didn't have a choice. They were born with it. As far back as they could remember, they've just been able to see ghosts. So with us today is Veré del Rey. She is a spiritual healer. She was born with the ability to see spirits, but it took some adjusting for her when she was a child. Veré, why don't you tell us about your very first spiritual experience, when you knew you were different?
I'm from Mexico. I actually was born in Mexico. As far as I can remember, my very first supernatural experience was probably around the age of 5 or 6 that I can remember. There was a very specific moment where I actually happened to go outside and happened to find a little dead bird on the ground. And then I just picked it up because I was really sad. I was a kid, so for me it was like, oh my gosh, like he's dead. He was stiff dead. I actually remember picking up the little bird and putting him in my hand. And as I did that, I just said like a quick prayer, just whatever was in my heart in that moment. And I don't know if I remember any moments of CPR, when you watch little things on TV here and there. And I just remember holding him in my hand and just thinking like, oh, just I want this bird to be alive. What is he dead? Why is he dead? And I will never forget that just right in that moment, that little bird suddenly just flipped over, landed on his legs, flapped his wings, and flew away. That was the very first time that I just felt like, okay, what was this? I was happy. I was just happy that he was alive. But at the same time, it was just a very positive moment and very significant, because in the midst of all the different supernatural things that I would actually see and experience as a child, it was a very scary moment for me because I didn't really understand those things. I just remember just hearing this whisper. It was like, until today, I can never forget that. And it's almost like a whisper that I can say, it was like heavenly whisper. And I would always hear just that whisper, just God saying, to me, it was God saying that he had something for me. Like there's something very special that you will be doing. But like, along with that, there was so much going on in my home. It was very a rough life. Around that same time, my uncle happened to pass away. And this uncle, I just loved him. He was just very kind, very nice person. And I will never forget, in Mexico, the funerals are very different, as you probably, I don't know if you have experienced that, but over there, it's like they have the actual casket, open casket in the living room. And I remember that it was that time where, there were everybody that came to the funeral were saying their prayers. It was late in the evening, everybody's having coffee, and, just praying for my uncle who had passed away. I was a little girl, and then I'm outside suddenly I see him. I see my dead uncle walking. It was just incredible because he was very peaceful, but he was walking and he had what looked like a white gown. And he was literally holding a candle and he was walking, and a group of other people, which I didn't, in that moment, it didn't make sense. I didn't stop to think, who are the people? Of course not. I was a child. To me, it was just crazy. Like, it was really cool to see my uncle, but it still didn't make sense. The thing is, there was a bunch of people walking with him, but it's like he was walking and they were walking with him. And as I saw that, I could hear, it wasn't singing, he was like humming, like very peacefully, like and it just sounded very peaceful and like heavenly almost. This was like it's like a daily thing. So daily, like, there was these little kids that I would always just see like running around, and then I would hear them. Sometimes I wouldn't see them, sometimes I would just hear them, and they would laugh. Like, it was just a weird laugh, but it was always in the middle of the night. When I was a kid, it was really in the middle of the night. Like, most of the manifestations of I want to say that now I look at them as like wandering spirits. So now I can tell the definition of what spirit is what, but back then I didn't understand much. But yes, it was every night that would happen. But during the day, I would also see them. During the day, I would experience a lot. So for me, it really became hard because there was a time when I just couldn't identify whether if it's nighttime or daytime anymore. So I think because I was so young and I didn't know what I was dealing with, I really developed like major anxiety, and I was scared of people because I didn't know if they were dead or if they were alive. I didn't want to go to the streets. I just wanted to stay home. And then I would ask my mom all the time, mom, I would describe a situation. I'd be like, oh, this and this happened. Did you see that? Or did you hear that? My mom was like, no, I didn't. Yeah, it was a combination of seeing spirits, the spirits of people who had just passed on, with messages. I would go to sleep and have a dream about a natural disaster, and the next thing, yes, it's just, it would come to pass. I would dream about the lady in the corner, for example. It's just an example, and then if I would have a dream about her passing away, and then sure thing, 2 weeks after that, I would hear that she was not alive anymore, that she had passed away. So my childhood was all of that, but very, very, very scary and confusing for me, especially because I had no guidance, and there was so much going on in my own home that, I don't think my parents had the time to provide that guidance for me. So all I ever did, I didn't really know God, or felt like I didn't have a sense of God, but I remember talking to God daily. I always would just say, I don't know, I heard about you, but this is what's going on, and can you help me? Because it really was like a battle between good and evil within me, just because of everything that I was experiencing. So I would have those dreams with like the information of what was coming, and I knew it was gonna happen. But then at the same time, sometimes within that, I had what you call night terrors. So it's a combination of the two.
I can't even imagine living like that. I can't even watch scary movies sometimes. I just watched the movie The Exorcist like a year ago because it was like traumatic when I was a kid. Not much less seeing like dead bodies just hanging out in my house. So you would just wake up in the morning and there would be ghosts in your house? How did it work?
For me, it's either during the day, at nighttime. I could be at the market, and then all of a sudden I get a message, and it's like, it just, this feeling where like, if you're not able to actually, because sometimes I'll be standing to a person, and then it's right for that person in that moment, and it's like in that very moment, you have to figure out how to deliver the message to that person, because you know that they're gonna walk out the store and you might not see them again. You know, a lot of the times when they come to me, they start speaking to me because they know I can hear them, but it's not always that they're speaking to me. A lot of the times they have gone to like their loved ones, friends, and no one is hearing them. And it's frustrating for them because they come and they're like, I'm trying to get a hold of so and so, but they can't hear me, but they're not paying attention, but they're not listening. Sometimes they say that, other times they just come directly and start speaking to me. But what I have noticed most of the time is that when that happens, I'm just like the person witnessing, but I'm there, like, I want to say like it's even like in spirit, but I'm not like, it's not me that they're talking to. They're just giving me this information. Not all the time, but a lot of the times they come and they're talking because they're trying to get a hold of that person, and that person is not there. So they come to me because they know that I will hear them. So this one time he came to me and he started speaking as if he's speaking to the person he went to look for and couldn't find. So then he came to me, and then he started saying, like, he was crying. Ghosts don't look like, people might think they look like ghosts, or like, you know, like just how sometimes people think of spirits might look, you know. When I see them, they come to me with clothing like regular people. And then this man was wearing very humble clothing, like he looked like he was from some part in Mexico, like, you know, he was wearing his guayabera and, you know, his sombrero, you know, and then all he said was, he was crying and he was like, please forgive me, I didn't mean to do it. And he just kept repeating that the whole time. Sometimes they'll be brief, but a lot of the times it just continues for a while. You know, it depends what's going on with them. And so he just kept repeating that. And I want to say that it was probably a good 5 minutes maybe, that this is all he kept doing. And then it took me a bit to realize, okay, does he know that is he talking to me, like giving me the message, talking to me? So I mean, I learned that he's still giving me the message, but just in a different form. He wasn't directly telling me like, please tell so and so, because sometimes they do. Sometimes they say, please tell her, or please tell him. But in this case, he's just showing himself saying this. Then I learned that he had gone to different, I guess some of her loved ones, you know, even the people that this message was for, but they couldn't hear him, you know, they couldn't hear him. So he was already very, very like overwhelmed, you know. I know it sounds crazy to say that, but it's true. So then what happened was that it was the very first time that I had a dream, and that I actually had a visitation that way, and that it was someone that I hadn't ever met. Because to be honest, recently when I had that spiritual encounter, I started having a lot of dreams about a lot of people around me and actual situations, and I would respond to that, you know. So there's a lot of that happened that I responded to, but I'm focusing on some significant things that you might want to hear. So in this case, that's what happened. He came to me and he said that, and then the next morning my husband is the one that I would always just share everything. I still do. And I told him that day, I'm like, this is very different, because I have never had the experience of someone coming to me like that. Now, the thing is, when this happens, it could be at nighttime. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's in my sleep. Sometimes I know 100% that I'm sleeping and it's a dream, but a lot of the times it's an actual vision, you know, like I don't have to be asleep. So it's a combination of, it could be either or, just like in the day, same thing. sometimes I can feel all of a sudden I feel very tired, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take a nap. And I think it's just me feeling tired, and I go take a nap, but little do I know that suddenly then in that moment, it's like the spirit utilizes the time to speak, to kind of, share. So in the morning, I told my husband, I'm like, this is very different. And I don't really, like, I don't know, who am I supposed to talk to about this? Because I don't even know the man. But I felt like we were having a finance class. That's the amazing thing about this, is that we were having a finance class. There was a big group right there. So for some reason, the guy that was leading the group, he started talking about finances and how you could be a good steward of your finances, but then he mentioned spiritual gifts. And I mean, he just did that. And somehow he asked everyone to share, like, what do you think spiritual gifts are, right? I never thought of myself as, oh, I have a spiritual gift. Trust me, I was trying to figure myself out at that moment, but everybody took a turn, just sharing what they thought. And then I decided to share. It was so heavy in my heart that I actually was like, actually, I don't know if this falls under spiritual gifts, but this is what happened. This one spirit came to me last night, and this and this and that. And I described him, and I explained what he said, and that's it. The meeting ended, and this lady that was actually at the meeting comes to me, and she was so intrigued by what I shared. And then she tells me, she says, can you please do me a favor? Would you mind sharing, again, what this man looked like and what he said? And I did. I wasn't even done finishing up what he was saying when she just started weeping, like not crying, but like, like completely. And I was like, are you okay? And then she's like, yes, but that man that you just described, he is my father. And last year, he killed my mom and killed himself right after. Oh my God. As in that very moment when she said that, it's like this, I don't even know how to explain. It's like this force of energy. Like usually that happens like in a moment, like just came to me, and it was like just word of knowledge. I call it that because I don't know what else to call it, but it's almost like messages, it's like what I needed to say to her. And, I feel like I can't even tell you where that comes from. I always call it God. I always call it, the messengers of him, because in that very moment, I got like information, tell her this, tell her that. And, and I did. And it was so amazing because in that very moment, she was able to actually move on, release all that unforgiveness that she was carrying. And she was able to finally, she really spoke those words, and she said, Dad, I forgive you. I forgive you for killing my mother last night. I know now that this is not what you meant to do, because this is what he kept saying, in the visitation, he kept saying, please forgive me, please forgive me. That was not what I wanted to do. I didn't mean to do that, and I was the first one shocked to see the outcome when there was completely no way that I could even find who is this for, who is this for? And that was very healing for her, and very healing even for me.
I grew up with a very superstitious family. I grew up believing that if you see a ghost, it's because there's a curse on you, you did something wrong, or it's a demon following you, or whatever. It was never good. So we never talked about it. And it was always just repeating old wives' tales, never any education about, what spirits are. Either it was always like one extreme or the other. It was like either it was saints or it was demons. It was never like, oh, your Theo from the afterlife is coming to see you. Never like that. It was one extreme or the other. And that meant that if you did see one, nobody would say that they did, because they would feel Like they were going to be persecuted. They were going to be told that they did something wrong. What was it like for you telling your family that you could see dead people, that you could see ghosts, that you were seeing things? What does that mean for little Vera when you were a kid?
It's so sad, but it is a very lonely journey. And I think that is rough, because I wish it would be different for children, that they will have a different way. But even in today's society, so being a child is one thing, but once you grow older, you still experience the same rejection, the same things. I think in my own search with just figuring out who I was, I want to say that I probably tried so many different, I went to this church, to that church, to this church, to this church, only to be disappointed, because in every single book that they carried, the spirits is just, it's forbidden, it's the devil, it's just. So I remember that I had that moment where I actually turned to that same the same outlet that I had as a child, just talking to what I felt was God, what I felt was my faith, my angels, So I did that, and I honestly had my own spiritual experience, which was actually beautiful, because this time I was older, and I was very specific this time. There was so much going on that I just couldn't, it was overwhelming, just like the bombard. I felt like I was being bombarded by so many messages and so many things and so many people coming to me. By saying people, I mean like people who passed on, coming to me and talking to me. And there was times that like in one day, it's like 3 different ones, and every single day it was like that. And so I actually had I think more than a conversation, because I was so overwhelmed. I remember just one day I was like, okay, that's it. God, I mean, it sounds like you're the one that is doing this. And I literally just spoke to him, to it, and I said, I don't know what you want me to do with this. Like, what is this? Like, I believe that if this is happening to me, I even get emotional, sorry. Like, there's gotta be a reason, because, if there isn't, it's like, I just feel like I'm losing my mind. Like, I really need guidance. I need your help, and then it's so crazy, because I do recall that very moment that for like a whole month, it stopped. I didn't have any visions. I didn't have any visitations from any spirits. I didn't have any dreams of friends or family or people, or even people I didn't know. I didn't have anything. And then I got this conviction in my spirit, once the month happened, I feel like, I was like, okay, God is real, he is real, because he heard me. And then I just felt like I just had to kind of go to that place and be like, thank you. And I'm here. And forgive me for not trusting you, but I'm here. And if you are going to use me in some form, you're going to guide me. Oh my God. So it's like, that's it. I feel like that was the very, what they say, the pivotal moment, when it's just all developed from there. So today, I'm telling you, very significant that I'm here with you today. And the reason why I decided to go forward with this, that's one of the very reasons, because it is important that children, teenagers who go through so much in their teenage years, it's like some of them even look at the suicide as a way of coping because of what they're going through. And no one has been able to tell them, like, hey, let's see what that means. If you saw this, or if you heard this, what does that mean? it's impossible, you know. So sometimes that's the outlet they look for. Okay, maybe I don't belong in this world, you know. And sadly, that's just how it is today. And I feel like as more people come forward, you know, bringing up these things and saying, you know what, it happens, it's real, it's real, and no, you're not crazy, you know. And I think for me today, doing this, I'm not sure where this is gonna lead, but you know, for me that was pretty scary to come to the open and do this, because people are so judgmental. And you know, I sing at church sometimes, you know, I go and help different churches, but I'm not a part of one religion. I decided that I am the church, you know, that in order to just be healthy and sane and continue to help people the way God has called me to do in this supernatural manner, I have to stay non-affiliated when it comes to religions, because I help, like I work with so many people of different faiths, and that's okay.
I do believe that there are people who are just given the ability to see spirits, so they can help and guide the rest of us who can't see. I know that that's a thing that happens in this world, and that it's sent by God. That being said, I'm not saying go and just pay people to do this. It's there's a very thin line. Like I said, I interviewed and talked to a lot of people, and there are very decent and good human beings that call themselves mediums, and they're not like devil worshippers. I get that. There's people that choose to make money out of their gifts, and whatever. I can't say that they're good or bad, but there are bad. There are most definitely 100% people that are waiting for you to make a transaction with them. So what you're doing when you pay somebody is you're giving them the permission to basically look into your life, look into your spirit, and just, it's up to them. Once you give them permission, it's up to them to take what they want. You're literally making an exchange to allow them into your spirit. Like I said, there's a lot of good people, but that is literally what they're doing, because you cannot go and sit in front of somebody, and if you don't give them permission, they can't see your personal life unless they're a prophet or seers or whatever. There are people out there that are like that, but they're God sanctioned, so to speak. So don't just go out and pay people. A lot of people are out there just to take your money, and it's like reading a horoscope to you. They're just going to tell you, you know, very basic things. Oh, good things are coming your way. Well, thank you. Can I have my $20 back? No. So Vera, do you call yourself a medium? Because one of the women that I spoke to for one of the shows I worked on, I asked her, so why do you call yourself a medium if you're not like, you know, reading cards or you know, working with crystals or whatever? And she says, well, because it's something that it's a term people understand. It's like, I'm literally the person in the middle of you and God. I would say to you that basically means you don't need a middle person. You could talk to God directly, but that's another subject. But that's why she says she calls herself a medium. Are you a medium? Are you a psychic? Are you a fortune teller? Like, what do you call yourself?
See, and that's, a lot of people ask me that, and the thing is, I just find it to be that mediumship or the channeling of spirits. It's different. I find it to be different, but I say one thing: the more you can talk to, you know, to God and just say, guide me. That's what I do. I'm sure other people have their own system of who they access for this, but for me, that's the only thing that works. You know, I am a Christian. I actually wouldn't know how to do what I do without him being the center of all. I don't say that I don't meditate. I'm not gonna lie to you that sometimes I feel like meditation, people sometimes tell me you should meditate because when you meditate, your powers get like, you know, like you're like psychic and, you know, but then it's like, no, what people don't really get is that for me, it doesn't work that way. Like, for me, it's just there all the time. Like, God is constantly communicating with me, spirits come to me all the time. There's so much in the day and the night. It's 24/7. That's what's happening. And I say that, like, not in a prideful way, not complaining. I mean, all glory to the Lord.
So give us one for instance. Like, give us an instance where you saw a dead person and there was a message or something like that. Give us a for instance.
This one friend of mine, she's okay with me saying her name. Her name is Ana Posa, and her son actually passed away sometime last year. And it's one of those things where, I really just, in that time, I didn't know about it. So it's like, not that he came to me or anything like that right away, but bottom line is, like, one time I just happened to check on her. It's like, hey, how are you? And then she told me, she's like, my son passed away. And she explained, well, he took his own life, and then it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. What do you really say with stuff like that, right? And we just talked briefly, and then that very night, her son came to me. So he visited me, and it was very brief, but his visitation was, I want to say brief, but very, very informational, because he allowed me to actually see what went on while he was in the car driving. So he actually got killed in a car accident. But, Anna mentioned, he took his own, he killed himself, So that very night he comes to me and he says, please tell my mom I did not kill myself. And then he shows me the car, and he says he had like a conversation with his girlfriend. He mentioned, a few important things, but then he shows me inside the car, as he's in the car, he's so full of anger. And literally he talks about how angry he was, and that because he was so angry, he just lost control of himself emotionally. And then mentioned how, as he was driving, he attempted to reach out, to this one little, it was like a little bag, like a little box, when he actually was telling me the story in that visitation, it kind of looked like CDs or something, but apparently he was driving so fast, and then he just tried to grab that, and instead of pressing on what, the brake, he ended up pressing on the gas, keep the story short, and going further. And so basically he without even thinking, it was already, that's it, he was already dead. So that's pretty much what he let me know. And it's incredible because, yes, in that moment when he came to me, it was brief, although it was brief, he showed me all of this that happened in the car. Then he also goes and says, he mentions a box, which is a different box from what he was trying to reach. He mentions the box, there's a box, tell her to find the box. When she finds the box, she'll know that I didn't. I'm not sure how that made sense in that moment, but I relate the message to her, like, you won't believe, I told her, but this happened. I think Anna didn't really know that that's something that I've been dealing with, and I think it was really difficult maybe, and like, okay, and so she was like, okay, well, no, no, he killed himself. So, and I was like, okay. So I just let her know, like, I just wanted to give you the message because he wanted me to give you the message. And then I didn't see her for like a few weeks. Somehow we connected because she tells me, I have something very important to tell you. And I'm like, good, because I have something important to tell you, so somehow dinner worked out for that very night. We met for dinner, and that was just, I want to say last Wednesday. And then we sat down and talked, and then she tells me her journey. It's been rough, of course. She's been going through the grieving process, not easy. Of course, that was her baby. So at the same time, I always just hope that she's surrounded by all these wonderful people that are there to support her. And apparently that was the case. So there was people trying to help her, and she told me her journey with different people, and literally these are her words. She's like, I try this one and this one, and just different experiences with people who would tell her like, well, I can help you, I can help you talk to your son and stuff like that. And she was like, pretty much they charge all kinds of crazy money, but guess what, a lot of them are charlatans. Those were her words. Apparently by the time that we had met, she had already found the box, which was great. And then she showed me the box, and to be honest, it's like when she showed me the box, it was just chills just down my spine, because when I look at the box, it's exactly the same box that he showed me, that he kept talking about. And it was just beautiful, because I feel like she even told me, at the end, she's like, do you realize did you see me how I was at the beginning? How do I look to you right now after we talked? Like it's not the same. I'm not the same. It's like, I'm telling you, she's like, you should be charging people, you should be doing this, doing that. But it's like, I get what she's saying. But we were just talking about this. It's like, in my case, it's different, because they come to me, they actually, it's not like I'm summoning any spirits or anything like that. So just believe me when I tell you that me speaking to you today, it's linked to many other situations that just recently happened that have really empowered me to actually be very confident in what has been happening with me. And now I feel like I'm stepping into this new place where, like, social media is there for a reason, and I really believe that this is the time to use it, because let me tell you, I always have been stuck with, I would get messages and I would see the people, and I was just like that one I told you about, where like, it's like, who is that person? Like, I don't know, never seen them. Sometimes, I get the names, sometimes I get the full name, sometimes I get descriptive situation of how they were killed, or, what exactly happened. I get so much information, but for many years, I've been like so stuck when it comes to those specific situations. I feel like I might just end up using social media a little more, and just to go forward and be like, hey, I don't know who this is for, but this happened. I had a visitation, or this was given to me in a dream, or there's a person that has this condition, but I got this message, because that happens all the time, and I've been so stuck. And that's the thing, it's gonna be hard for people to actually understand that God can use even people like me, or like, yeah, situations that other people think as crazy, because very quickly people are gonna say, oh, she's a medium, or she's channel spirits, and people think that, but definitely not. I'm just obeying. Honestly, I'm just a messenger. I'm just obeying God. That's it.
Pero mi grandma, she was a healer. Like
okay, good. You understand that then.
Yeah. Ranchito en México, ella curaba y le daban huevos, o le daban or whatever, like they would just give her.
Yeah, like a cleansing con el huevo, con las hierbas. It's all just for ¿cómo se puede decir? Para sanidad, pero it's to take the opportunity to pray for the people.
Yes.
That's what it is. Because people no se van a dejar que ores por ellos. So you utilize that tool because they are familiar with it. They're like, okay, yes, I can do that. Pero si les dices que vas a orar por ellos, no van a venir.
So like my grandma never went to church because she grew up very poor and like out in the hospital, so she never had the access to church. and she
Yeah.
was deaf most of her life, but she knew hymns that were like, how do you know all the words to the hymn?
See?
And she knew Bible verses, and she never learned how to read. And I'm like, how do you know all
See?
the Bible verses? That's
She was a
crazy.
true believer.
Yeah, she was all about God. And I would see that she, like,
Believer.
people would line up to get healed by her, and she would never charge or anything. So like, I know the difference, in other words, that there's,
Yes, yeah. No, and a lot of the times, believe it or not, for people, versus just saying something, it's so hard for them to believe. But when they see a physical form of what you're doing, they feel like, oh yeah, no sé cómo explicártelo, como que lo creen un poquito más, right? Like they're able to embrace it a little more. And not only that, but it also speaks onto maybe their roots or their, les llama la atención porque conocen de lo que es, ¿no? I don't know, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful that God can use that.
For those of you that don't understand Spanish, what we were saying is that my grandmother was a faith healer when I was little. And what she would do is she would pray over people and she would heal them of, ailments, illnesses, witchcraft, whatever. And really, it was, people didn't really receive the word of God unless there was like a song and dance to it. So she would have to do like the whole rubbing an egg on the forehead, or, washing them with tree branches, or all those ritualistic things that people in my heritage, at least Hispanics, they think that's, you have to do that in order to be healed. There is definitely a place for some rituals in our culture, like altars or spirit, or cleaning your house with sage, or those little things that have been around since forever. There's definitely a place for that in your walk, in your spiritual walk, but that's for another episode, because it's too important to just paraphrase here. You'd be hurt more than helped if I just gave you tidbits about it. So we're going to cover that in another episode. For now, thanks again for joining us, Vera. Appreciate your time. So joining us now is Sam Clowder. Sam is a parapsychologist. Sam, I still believe that learning about spiritual life should start when you're a child. What are your thoughts on that? And tell us a little bit more about your background.
At Orange Coast College in Costa Mesa in 1974, I developed a parapsychology program, a study of paranormal phenomena. I was given access to a lot of technology by the school, and several different professors who advised me, students who wrote independent study contracts and did individual study in these paranormal phenomena. Well, it continues to today. There are societies, there are Aboriginal societies in Australia and many other places throughout the world that have in their culture an understanding of paranormal phenomena. Our culture does not. It's developing, but when I was a child in the 50s and 60s, it wasn't at all. People were considered crazy who saw things that nobody else saw, and they'd be put in psychiatric institutions, drugged, and so forth and so on. So I would sit with the child and have the child describe it, how the child feels about it, what kind of impact it's making on the child psychologically and intellectually and intuitively, and just discuss it. Because these paranormal phenomena, what makes them paranormal is they come and go. There is not enough data, enough situations that can be replicated to be studied in a scientific arena. The evidence we have is anecdotal, not quantitative, it's qualitative. Therefore, you really, just because you can't quantify the experiences, you should not discount the quality of the experience. And I would sit with a child and help the child develop even more quality in the experience. And if the child is afraid, I would calm the child, because just because if it doesn't have a body, if it's a disembodied spirit, It really can't do anything to an individual. But if the child is scared, the best thing to do is just sit and meditate, be still. Sit next to the child, hold the child on your lap, or sit next to the child with your arm around. Physical contact loving physical contact is very important for the child to feel safe and comfortable. And eventually it passes, as all things do. But it should be emphasized to the child that this is a very special talent and a very special experience. There is no reason to be afraid of it. There are spirits all around us.
But that being said, you know that there's good and there's bad, right? Like you know
Yeah.
when it's not good.
Those are forms the spirits take. And it's really determined by their actions and their intentions. But it's also determined by how you relate to them. Because if you relate to them with love and acceptance, one that's negative will realize it cannot, a negative spirit will realize it cannot affect you and will depart. Seek others to make fear. And you should never fear positive spirits. Positive spirit guides are there to help you. If an individual thinks they're being haunted, the thing to do is to let it be. Recognize the spirit and then have no fear of it. And the spirit will either depart if it's there to hurt you and you have no fear of it, it can't hurt you, so it will depart. And if the spirit doesn't depart, then it's there to help you. It's there to warn you of an impending conflict or danger. It's there to advise you. It's there to be your friend. And I'm going to tell you, there are far more spirits, just spirits, that are positive in this way than are negative. Many people don't realize this. One of the terms is your guardian angel. What are you going to do? Kick your guardian angel out of the house? Just because you're afraid of it? That's your problem. Your problem is fear. But you should never fear these spirits, because if, like I say, if it's a positive spirit, if it's a spirit of light, it's there to help you and guide you. If it's a negative spirit, if it's a spirit of darkness, it's there to gain power over you by making you fear it. And if you have no fear, it will go away.
I agree with a lot of what Sam says. I'm not quite there yet to just let my kids just be one with spirits, because here's the thing though, that I have seen spirits that are not that great. I go to a church where it's very spiritual, Revelation Church of LA, by the way, Prophet Levy. And it's I've seen people who have been possessed by demons, and some of those people are children, and I'm sure they were innocent and all that, but there are such things as bad spirits out there. My own children have seen good and bad spirits. How do I know that they're good or bad? I literally asked, what did you see? How did it make you feel? Literally tell me what it was that you saw, like details. And also I think that there's something about therapeutically for them, there's something about talking it out. Just like when you have a bad experience with a stranger on the street and you try and tell them that it's okay or it's not okay to talk to strangers. It's the same thing with spirits. I don't know why people are so stubborn and they just don't accept the fact that spirits exist. Some parents are so set on not being told what to do by a church or by they just don't want to be told that they're right or wrong, that they say they don't believe in anything. That means that they don't believe in a God, that they don't believe in anything else existing other than here and then we die. But that's like living with blinders. Just because you put them on doesn't mean that the whole world does not exist. It does. And your children suffer because you don't educate yourself about that kind of stuff. And I think that they do a disservice to themselves and they do a disservice to their children if they don't at very least hear people out when they're trying to tell them about it. I think that the best thing to do if your child sees ghosts is A, talk about it, B, go to a Bible-based church, because no matter what, they're going to at least know more about evil things than you are. I'm not saying pick a religion, I'm saying go to a Bible-based church, because at very least they'll talk to you about what's in the written word that cannot be changed. And also, watch people, men of God. There's a lot of stuff out there. There's stuff online, there's books, there's all these things that are available to us to educate ourselves about what's out there. And you know what? Knowing what's out there is half the battle. And if you learn how to protect yourself, you're golden. Like, if you learn how to access your angels, access your spirit guide, obviously I first call on Jesus. That's my number one. That's who I call on for everything. But he's not going to send us out here in these streets by ourselves. God's sent angels to us. He sent all kinds of spirits to help us and guide us. And on this next episode, that's what we're going to talk about. How do you access your angels? How do you know who your angel is? How do you know how to call on them? Which one does what? Which one helps you with what? Those things are important. And you know what? Even if you do not agree with me, that's okay. Even if you don't believe me, that's okay. But if you at least let me put it in your ear, you'll be prepared next time something happens to you. You'll at least know what it is. You'll at least know how to react. And that's what we're all about here. For now, thank you for joining me. Again, come back next week. It's going to be awesome. We're going to talk about all these great things. And please go to our social media pages, like and subscribe, and let people know we're out here. See you next week. This is the Quickening Podcast, and I'm Marcia Lejan.